I was always a huge fan of the A Song of Ice and Fire books, so when Game of Thrones initially aired in 2011, to a rating of over 2 million people, I was ecstatic that such a wonderfully written fantasy book series was being adapted so well. Since 2011, the ratings have more than quadrupled, and each season has diverged more from the source material. Season 6 had some very good moments, and also some very low ones, but overall was an improvement from Season 5. With a shortened season and a budget increase, I was interested in seeing where HBO would take the show in Season 7. My expectations were that the writing wouldn't be on the level of the first 4 seasons, however the production and the cinematography, which has been excellent in the last few seasons, would supplement it, so that the premiere episode of Season 7 meet, excel, or fall below my expectations. Stay tuned for this review to find out. The Starks are back in Winterfell, and Lord Snow has gathered all the Northern Lords and the Wildlings to discuss their plans. Jon sends Tormund and the Wildlings to Man East Watch by the Sea, and ironically, the Wildlings become the Night's Watch. When Jon Snow mentions that Carhold and Lasthearth would be the first freeholds in the path of the others if they managed to breach the wall, Sansa suggests that the castles be given to new families that remain loyal to the Starks during their fight with the Boltons, and the men of the North seem to agree with her. Jon Snow, however, is unwilling to strip the castles from the families that have held them for centuries. I predicted that there would be disagreements and conflict between Sansa and Jon, and it seems to be starting early on. Later, when Queen Cersei sends a letter, Sansa suggests to Jon that he is focusing too much on the northern threat and not enough on the threat to the south. When it comes to the Umbers and the Karstarks remaining lords of their castles, I can see where Sansa and the other men of the north are coming from. However, Jon Snow is a leader that inspires loyalty in his subjects, and I believe that the Umbers and the Karstarks will remain loyal to him. Also, I have to side with Jon when it comes to the northern threat versus the one in the south. Even with Euron's ships, Cersei would be little threat to northerners. Winterfell is hundreds of leagues from the sea, and Cersei would be better off using those resources to fight her other enemies that surround her in every direction. The northern threat of the others is a far more pressing matter. I am interested to see the way the conflict between Lord Snow and Lady Stark develops, and with Littlefinger stoking the coals, more issues may arise between the two. Cersei seems to be growing colder and colder by the moment, sparing no thought for her dead family members, stating to Jaime that they will build a dynasty of themselves. But Cersei also realizes that, of course, she cannot succeed without allies, so she summons Euron Greyjoy to King's Landing. And his pirate ship, the Silence, actually looks pretty cool. In exchange for an alliance of the Iron Fleet, Euron asks for Cersei's hand in marriage, which she denies, telling him that he's untrustworthy. Euron then declares that he will bring Cersei back a priceless gift to prove his loyalty. The question is, what could this gift possibly be? My first guess would have been one of Daenerys' dragons, but how could Euron capture a dragon? Well, if he had the magic dragon binder like his book counterpart, he could bind one of Daenerys' dragons to his will and bring it to Cersei as a gift. This would tip the balance, making Cersei a much more formidable force. Cersei also wants the death of the Sand Snakes. If Euron killed them for her, she would surely be grateful. I think the heads of the Sand Snakes is the more likely gift here. There's been no mention of the Dragon Binder yet, and most fans, myself included, want to see the Sand Snakes dead. So Sam is at the Citadel, and we get a rather gross montage, and I won't ruin your lunch by showing it here. It was rather pointless and went on a little bit too long. And also, did we have to see that dead guy's junk? While working with an Archmaester who may be a stand-in for Maester Marwyn from the books, Sam inquires as to whether or not he can have access to the restricted section of the archives. The Archmaester tells Sam that although he believes Sam is telling the truth about the White Walkers, he will not give him access. This scene gives us cool insight into the philosophy of the Maesters of Old Town. The Archmaester tells Sam that there are many times throughout history when mankind has believed that the world was at an end. The Citadel is there to be the memory of mankind. Sam, however, steals the key to the archives anyways, and discovers in the books he takes confirmation that Stannis was telling the truth about the dragon glass at Dragonstone. He writes a letter to Jon, telling him of his discovery. We get one final moment at the Citadel when we discover that Jorah is there locked away, his grayscale seeming to have progressed. Can someone explain to me why Jorah is always trying to touch people? You have grayscale, back up, man. As there is no cure for grayscale, I do believe that Jorah will die in his cell, and he must be resigned to his tragic fate. While on her way to King's Landing, Arya comes across a group of Lannister soldiers, and one of them just happens to be Ed Sheeran. Initially, I suspected that Arya would poison them. She had more than enough opportunity to do so. But as she spoke to them, she realized that these men didn't deserve death simply because they wore Lannister colors. I thought this was a great moment. Arya realizes that simply because someone is associated with an enemy doesn't necessarily make them enemies themselves. Probably my favorite scene of this episode was the Hound and the Brotherhood. They come across the house of the father and daughter who the Hound robbed a few seasons ago. Inside the house, they find the father has taken he and his own daughter's life so that they would not starve during the winter. Later that night, the clearly guilt-ridden Hound buries them along with the help of Thoros of Myr. This is a clear reference to the fate of the Hound in the books. In A Feast for Crows, he is seen as the gravedigger on the Quiet Isles in the Riverlands. The Hound burying the man and his daughter was a very emotional and touching moment in this episode. The Hound being shown the army of the dead through the flames was also a great moment. You can tell by the expression on his face that what he saw truly terrified him, and now he is fully invested to facing this threat. Finally, we get to Daenerys, and she arrives in Westeros for the first time since her birth. There's not much to be said about this scene except for the fact that the cinematography looks great and the visual effects look stunning. It's nice to see parts of Dragonstone that we've never seen before, and also parts that are familiar. Dany's return to her birthplace was quite the grand moment, and the music was excellent. Obviously, I have to talk about the one scene that I truly didn't like very much. As soon as the opening began, I knew what would happen. It was obvious from the beginning that Arya would poison the Freys. For me, since the outcome was so obvious, the scene held very little tension and made me cringe even a little bit when Arya took off Walder's face Mission Impossible style. I did, however, enjoy Arya's speech in Walder's skin, but I thought that overall the scene didn't quite work and wasn't as impactful as it could have been. My conclusion is that this episode was good, but it certainly was not the ultra exciting premiere that I was expecting. Most of the scenes were setup or filler. This episode had many good moments, but as a whole it left me wanting. With only 7 episodes in this season, I expected a far more fast-paced opening, but this opening was slower. I certainly wouldn't call this a bad episode, I would say it's okay, but that overall I am slightly disappointed. The visuals looked great as I expected, the dialogue for the most part was very well written. I enjoyed being returned to Westeros, I enjoyed seeing Cersei and Jaime back together in King's Landing, I enjoyed seeing Sansa and Jon together in Winterfell. I give this episode a 7 out of 10. And don't forget to leave your Q&A questions for my next video in the comments section. Make sure you like and subscribe for more ideas of Ice and Fire.